What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining me for the Crypto Mavericks podcast. And we have a very special guest, somebody that I'm personally super excited to be interviewing because I am absolutely a holder of a lot of these assets. But it's John Patton. He's the co-founder of Treasure. Really excited to have him on. John, how you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was excited when we found out we were getting this interview. I was like, all right, I have a boatload of magic. I have some old school Legion Genesis. I have some auxiliary legions. I have some smalls. I have probably I have a fair share of the assets and definitely curious to talk a little bit about it. But before we dive into all things Treasure, would love to know a little bit about your background and how you even got involved in developing Treasure.
So I was a developer before crypto, and then around 2018, I came in. Well, I bought the top in 2017, and then after I became a community member, I started getting more interested in the technology, like everyone. And decentralized finance was coming about. So I started off as a DeFi writer while I was learning the development inside crypto. Then I went to work for a project in Cosmos called Osmosis.
Oh yeah.
And Treasure, yeah. Sonny Agarwal is one of the best guys in crypto. I didn't have any relationship to anyone in crypto, and he gave me a shot. So I'll try and shout out Sonny every chance I get. And Treasure wasn't supposed to be a thing. It was just Loot was a project, an NFT project you could fork very quickly. I forked in about 30 minutes, and then it just kept growing from there.
Awesome stuff. Yeah. Well, I'm excited you developed it. And if anybody, we'll get into this a little bit deeper, but like Bridge World is kind of like the main land you can go to, and they have this like the song. The song brings back like so many vibes to me. I would just leave my office and have that song playing. It well, we can get a little deeper into that, but why don't you tell everybody within the audience, what Treasure is, what Bridge World is, just give us a whole breakdown of what the entire platform is.
Yeah, so we're a gaming ecosystem. We have our own L2 chain now built on top of the ZK stack. But we wanted to build a gaming focused blockchain and consumer experience. So there's a lot of partners in the ecosystem now. We also develop our own first party titles, Bridge World being one of them. Small Brains is also an NFT that I released inside Treasure. It has a couple games being developed around it. But we're a gaming ecosystem.
Awesome. And kind of what's the difference between your gaming ecosystem and some of the more centralized ecosystems out there? Like what's your overall big vision?
So we're run by the community. We're a DAO. So our financials are completely transparent, and a lot of us started in the community initially. One of my co-founders, Karel, just built tools website that was really great, and then he came to work on the team, and so it has a really organic feel to putting the ecosystem together.
My next question is kind of let's talk about the magic token because, like I said, I have some NFTs. So I have the Legion Genesis, I have the Auxiliary Genesis, I have some smalls. And I really enjoyed it when it first came out. When it first came out with those Legion Genesis, and obviously you were around, it felt like it was an Ethereum printer because you could create more auxiliary legions and sell those for quite a premium. So it was I was like, man, this is a lot of fun and this is outstanding. And a couple of me and my buddies were in on it. And Magic at the time was ripping. And this is really when like NFTs were just an absolute craze, and it definitely get how that wasn't sustainable for like any ecosystem at the time. But we'll love to hear more about really what's happening in those specific games and the Magic token overall.
Yeah, so the Magic token is the currency that's used across the gaming ecosystem in different games. So we started out initially with really limited goals, where we were going to build this one on-chain game called Bridge World, where the Magic token was distributed to players in it, and then the goals would be that other people would build simple on-chain games on top of it. But the ecosystem kept growing because we had a very vibrant community. And so we brought in amazing games like The Beacon and Zverse and many others, a dozen titles now, much, much higher fidelity than Bridge World ever was. And so the role of the Magic token, it still remains the governance token within the DAO, but it's transitioned from being a medium exchange purely to now mostly an infrastructure token, because a lot of these partners have their own currencies inside the game that players want to transact in. So you can use you can pay for gas on the chain in Magic. We're launching soon data availability staking through Eigenlayer. And we have a pretty deep partnership with Eigenlayer, where we're now building decentralized gaming infrastructure and also AI infrastructure using something called AVS within Eigenlayer. It's a really neat system where basically you can extend on-chain slashing conditions, if you will, to basically prove that you're going to validate an off-chain service. If you fail to do so correctly, then you're slashed on chain. So we saw that, and we saw this was a perfect fit for where Magic needs to go. Because when we're talking about games, it requires a lot of off-chain infrastructure beyond simple DeFi protocol that's 100 lines of code or whatnot. So Magic is transitioning in sort of an infrastructure and collateral role more than the medium exchange previously.
Great, love to hear it. And sorry, Joe, and then I'm totally gonna kick it back to you. I just got one more question. What's up with my Legion Genesis?
So we're rebooting the Bridge World game into Canopy, and the Legion Genesis have been renamed into Seekers. But Canopy is going to be a really cool game. It's based on Ingress, and so the game designer Noise War, who's developing it, was like, "What if we just turn the blockchain into a map?" And so the same way, Ingress is a game like Pokemon Go, where you go out in the real world and you have to like conquer nodes, and it's sort of laid on top of the real world. So we want to do the same thing with block space, and also introduce AI agents that can cooperate in swarms. So it's this expansive world that takes place on top of blockchain space with these agents kind of crawling across it, trying to defeat you.
AI is Brian's favorite topic. He talks about it on a weekly. So do I. I'm in San Francisco, so that's all we see. My question is about just an article that you wrote, right, about AI and gaming. You said that we're not far off from that. I was just curious how gaming you see it will evolve, or where Web3 fits best, right? Or where gaming is in general. Or I know I have a ton of questions here because there's just so many questions when gaming comes, because there's virtual reality, there's augmented reality, there is console, there's handheld, there's PC, there's so many things, right? And how does that translate to Web3, if at all? You've been in this for so long that you might see kind of where it's going. And then on the tail end of that, how does AI fit in all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to sort of what NFTs demonstrated, or what I really loved about them when I first got into them. I got into before crypto gaming, just the aspect of ownership. It didn't really matter to me that it was a purely digital object. And I loved that. And I think a lot of people experience that for the first time through Bored Ape and profile pictures in general. And that kind of thing, that emotional resonance that you can have with this digital artifact that you own and you can trade to people. You can even stamp additional bits of your personality on it as you own it over time. That's a really cool concept, and that's the thread that connects Web3 games, be they single player games or these MMOs, where the use case is very obvious on why you want a decentralized economy on a blockchain. AI is one of those things where I'm sure we've all read equal amounts about it and are fascinated. It's so young; it's going to go in lots of different directions here, but I think it's one of those things where crypto isn't going to replace credit cards anytime soon. It serves kind of a niche use case in the financial system, but a very, very important one. And I think the way AI and crypto intersect will be in a very powerful way. But the majority of agents will always be centralized. Companies will make their own customer service type agents that they can pull the plug on whenever they want. Crypto allows you to make assets or forms of data that are permanent. And when you combine the eigenlayer type systems I was talking about, where you can run these decentralized off-chain systems, you can create really weird stuff like autonomous beings that then use the blockchain for frictionless finance. So I think one big way it'll interact is that agent-to-agent communication and finance. Be that selling parts of their knowledge to each other, or just paying each other for services. things like AI Upwork, those kinds of things you'll see taking place in crypto. Yeah. And that's not an original idea. I'm going off of like things I've read on Google Scholar that makes sense. Like an AI agent can't make an Upwork account. So if they want to sell their services to another one, they have to use crypto.
It's such a weird world we live in right now. I mean, we're talking about like AI, and they've really AI and AI agents. I mean, obviously they've been integrated or like flirting with crypto for quite some time now, but it's felt like over the past few months, it's like an absolute buzz. And I definitely love the integration that you're doing here with Treasure and AI. And I think the sky's the limit. I've been a big fan of your vision from early on. Like I said, that like, I dove in deep. And I'm very excited for what the future is going to hold here. And one thing that I always picked up with Treasure was like the interoperability that was always talked about. Could you talk about like how that's like a cornerstone or somewhat of a cornerstone, if I'm using that correctly, of Treasure, and paint us a picture of like an NFT going from one game to another game and why that's an advantage?
Yeah, so that's one of those things where not just us, but a lot of people in the space were trying. I've talked to the Nifty Island founder about this. That's just a dream, and it goes back 20 or 30 years, even before crypto, right? Like, what if you could have this metaverse that was actually just a bunch of game worlds that you could kind of traverse through these portals? That was really, really hard in a lot of ways prior to agents to think about how this works, because you have these economies that have been meticulously balanced already. So it's very hard to like introduce economic interoperability. And we had some luck with it, but with an agent, it was just instantaneous on why it makes sense. Because here you have this thing that does have the ability, like a human player, to enter new environments and reason about them, figure out how to get better. And then it takes that knowledge base and goes to a new game. So it isn't just like applying patterns on games it's learned to beat. It learned like the lore of that world, participated in creating it. And so then you think you have these things, whether or not a game designer is even intended it or not, the worlds start cross-pollinating between each other just because of these intelligent agents, traversing them. And so it's gone from something where, a bunch of people, myself included, were banging our head against the wall for 30 years. How do we make this happen? To now, like, it's going to be unpreventable. Yeah.
Talk to me about like the traditional gamers. Are they going? I mean, it makes sense to me, but maybe I'm not the most traditional person or traditional gamer. I like work in Web3 and I love crypto. But it seems like there's always like skeptical people whenever we talk about like Web3 and crypto, and even like when we're talking about like bringing one asset to another game. It makes so much sense to me, but it feels like there's always pushback from a traditional gamer. Help me make sense of that.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be encountered in this part also, because a cynical way to look at it is it's just a bot. So everything that RuneScape's been dealing with, I've heard people say, and they make a good point. Agents could be really cool, but the vast majority of normal gamers are just going to see these things as bots. So where I think we're going is that new game genres basically going to have to be built from scratch around these things. And a lot of game developers, what they're going to deal with is whether people like these things or not. What an agent can actually do is it can write its own bots that it sends into the games and then it evaluates performance. So if you have this like flexible, intelligent mechanism that can create things that are already better than human players and it gets a chance to iterate on them endlessly, then you throw in a little bit of financialization where, it's worth it for the agent to try and get better and better at it. Personally, I just think that seems inevitable. Yeah. So you kind of have to learn to love them.
And let's talk a little bit about game exchanges. So that feels like that's going to be a natural path. And how's that going to change like players and the way they think about playing a game, spending money in a game, just having it's like a whole new world, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so I'm at a point in life, I've got two young kids. I can't play games or do pretty much any of my hobbies to the same extent I previously could. And I'm noticing too, in games in general, it's moving way towards the hyper casual. Like if you look at the demographics on the games that take off, people are playing in tiny spurts. And something like an MMO, which is great, and it's like an art form and all of that, it's becoming much more niche. So something like an agent that can create a continuous, movement through the game, and you check in on it later because you're super busy. That makes a lot of sense to me on why that would be a natural fit with these kinds of games. Yeah, or the demographics that are becoming like much bigger.
You said you have 2 young kids. What ages are we talking about right now?
Like really young. And maybe I shouldn't have said that since I'm like showing my face and all that. I don't have kids. I'm a single man.
Okay, yeah. So, well, the reason I brought that up is because I have four little ones, and we've been playing. Joe has some kids as well, a young child as well, and my kids are just getting into the age of playing video games, and we've been just starting like with it recently. And it's been a lot of fun for me because before I had kids, I haven't played a lot of games other than like Web3 games and things. But we've recently started playing games, and I'm just absolutely smoking these kids in every game that they have ever. They're like, Daddy, how are you so good at this? I was like, you don't even understand. Like I was like born playing these games. I've put countless hours. They're like, but have you played this exact game? I go, I'm still really good, way better than you. So we have a lot of fun with that. It didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but it's interesting because a lot of these games have been like play to earn games and in Web3. And I think about it with my kids and wanting to turn them into like little play to earn farmers. What are your thoughts of like play to earn and games and like what direction we're going in there?
Yeah, it's it depends on whether or not you're trying to build a whole economy around it. I think you can do it. It's kind of one of those things where, like what's the odds that the Earth happened in the way it happened? Very, very small. But it's this amazing extraordinary thing that it did happen. That's kind of what building these P2E games is like. And one of the major challenges I see is if you think about like how long it takes to build a game where someone will actually just continue paying to play it. It takes many years. It takes hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes. And by that time, when you have investors who've been sitting on an investment for 5 years and their clients are begging them to get out of it, that does not bode well for these game economies. And Treasure, we focused on indie specifically for that reason, because it just makes way more sense in the economics. These AAA games, I don't think that they will ever make sense in Web3 unless something like AI changes the speed at which you can make these things. New content, there has to be new syncs and new content all the time to keep the game from musical chairs from ending. And it has to be fun enough for people to actually lose at it financially and say that was a fun experience for me. So I'm optimistic that we'll get there with AI and it'll be these indie developers that start with very small budgets and huge imaginations, and they're technically very proficient, and they will pull it off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important for the games to be fun at the end of the day. Sorry, Joe, I cut you off again, man. But I'm gonna shut up now.
No, I was just curious. If I was a first time user coming on Treasure, which I am, when I heard about Small Brains like 3 years ago, it was already at an astronomical price range where I could not have gotten involved. But as a first time user coming on Treasure, what's a great game that you would recommend for them to get involved in?
There's a bunch. So Calamity is really great. I would go check out the Beacon right now. They're in an early phase of releasing the alpha. There's really too many to mention. Bitmates and Zverse. And the really cool thing why we're all so excited, this has been like 2 years of these teams coming to their alpha now. And it's, they are like hardworking indie devs that have built their economies in a way that communities really participate in and have built these excellent games. So we don't have that many games. It's a very curated portfolio. I would suggest just going to the marketplace and going down the list and trying them all. Yeah. But Smalls, it's funny you say that, because that bull run, thinking back on those prices, sometimes now when I bring a new developer in, like one AI developer started working for us, he's like, man, it's $200 for a picture. And I think that's like, this is healthy. Like, that is a ridiculous amount for a picture.
Go back to 2021 when I was paying around 6-figure Legion Genesis. So I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever found. It was I'm just optimistic in Web3 gaming overall, and especially with what you've built at Treasure and the indie companies that you're embracing and bringing on. I love that it's a curated, list. It gets a little overwhelming whenever you go into similar platforms and there's like all these different games. I'm like, I don't even know where to start. So I'm definitely gonna take a look at some of the games that you mentioned. I do have a question on my list here that I wanted to hit, and it's what's one game from your childhood you wish you could rebuild or somebody could rebuild on Treasure, kind of with like modern bells and whistles? Anything nostalgic there that you would love to bring on the platform if possible?
Mist. I feel like a mist that never ends. That was my favorite video game. And there's one really cool thing. I'll never have enough time in my life to do it, but you can combine several pieces of crypto technology now, where you can build games that have uh, so like a secret keeper. And if you've ever heard of like augmented reality games where you have actors that are kind of pretending to carry this thing out in the real world, so you can actually build those games now. Whereas before, these used to be like performance art pieces that they would do as marketing. You'd have actors pretending to do these things. But if you stood up you'd had your own blockchain and you had some ZK component that was like incentivized to keep running, you could have these game worlds with these characters and these NPCs that just truly exist forever. And every time someone comes back, they can have that first experience, and it's slightly different. Yeah, a version of that as Mist. That would be amazing.
You're all over it. Okay, I like that call. That would be fun. I would absolutely play it as well. John, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast, talking about all things Treasure. Really excited. And I know our audience is going to be very interested because AI, crypto gaming, crypto, like this is what we live for. It's a lot of fun. Love to give an opportunity for anybody that wants to learn more about Treasure and how they could find more information about it for you to give it a shout out.
And so you go to treasure.lol, treasure.lol, and that explains our ecosystem really well. And, buy one of the NFTs and play the games. Yeah.
Awesome. And we're going to put all the links down below the video here. Yeah, we're really happy you jumped on. Thanks, John.